Today's video is All is Mind, which is a concept that I've borrowed from the book The Kabbalion, which is Hermetic philosophy. And to stimulate this conversation, which is based on Neville's work, we're going to play a clip from one of his lectures and get into some discussion.
There are two sides to the coin, mind and speech. We are told in the 50th Psalm, to him who orders his conversations aright, I will show the salvation of God. Now there is a work that came out in the first century, just about the time that our evangelists were gathering together our Gospels. It's called the Hermetica. And in this work, today we have a translation in 4 volumes by Walter Scott. He said there are two gifts that God gave to man alone and to no other mortal creature. These are mind and speech. And with these gifts, these are equivalent to immortality. If a man uses these gifts rightly, he will differ in nothing from the immortals. And when he sheds his body, they will be his guides. And by them, he will be taken into the troop of the gods and into the souls of those who have attained to bliss.
Now, you've probably heard me play this clip before in one of my previous discussions. And the reason why is it's important to recognize and keep this as simple as possible, that what we have is mind, and all is mind, and what we have within our consciousness is what we are interpreting, experiencing, reflecting, and integrating in this outer world 5-sensory experience. Thus, when we understand what we put into our mind, both from the outer world experience, 5-sensory integration, as well as the inner world, inner eye, or the 6th sense, is being impressed on the subconscious mind, and it's being re-expressed outward as our experiences. Now, fundamentally, we work with inner conversations or imagination. So, in order to change our inner conversations to reflect what we desire or reflect the experience, we ask ourselves, number one, is it what we truly desire? Because that what we commit to is what we love. Now, when I reflect back on my journey, I recognize that anything that I ever committed to, anything that I've ever said I was going for, I was able to bring forth because there was a conviction, as Neville Goddard puts it, it is already done. The idea behind this, all is mine, is that all things exist and all things simultaneously exist in the eternal now, and all of this is individual expressions of the one mind. We're one with the one mind, we're part of the one mind, and we are individual expressions of this one mind. So what we do is we change the contents of our own consciousness, what's in our mind, and one of the best ways to do this is with our inner speech, through affirmation, through self-talk, through interpretations of our experiences that we have day to day to what we desire to bring forth, as we then observe the outer world changes. So we're working with the principles of bringing forth success at a level of mind. Now, when we look at, for example, the entrepreneurial journey to creating success, we'll recognize that there are environments, there are places that you would be in, and then there's how you would interact with these environments, how you would integrate with these environments. That would be governed by your mind. There are certain behaviors that you would call optimal behaviors or bad habits or whatever your interpretation may be of your behaviors, which are again externalization and reflection of your mind. Then we also have the skills, certain kinds of skills that you would develop on the journey, sales, marketing, leadership, operations skills, proficient skills in whatever area that you are providing the product or service in. Those skills are also a reflection of your mind, as in you have recognize that these are the skills. This is how you're going to play it out in theater to what you would call entrepreneurial success, the end result, the end goal. The journey is going to be this product or service that you're going to create, or multiple products or services. And you're going to be providing certain capabilities or expressing certain capabilities on the journey. Certain types of skills will be cultivated. Your ability to develop those skills from a place of love, joy, flow, authentic expression is going to be based on your interpretation of mind. Do you have resistance towards, and we use the other two examples, the environment, resistance towards your behaviors, resistance to the skills, or are you one with them? Where do you find the resistance? The resistance is in the mind. So our goal is to identify the resistance in the mind and evolve our assumptions, our beliefs, our perspectives on our relationship to the behaviors, the environments, as well as the capabilities. Now, above that, and I'm referring to, some of you might know, the Robert Dilts model, above that we have the values and beliefs. And above that we've got the identity, and above that we've got the vision. Look at the vision as mind, and what is made up in the mind is the concept of self, called the identity. This is your self-image. This is how you interpret yourself to be in this integration into the world, as well as how you relate with others. This is all based on the concept of self and relationship to your success and the journey. All of this is concept of self. So over the videos, we've been talking about changing the concept of self, evolving the concept of self, the self-image, recognizing that when you change the concept of self, which is part of the mind, then how you integrate and how you relate to the five sensory experiences change, both on the journey and to the fulfillment of what you desire to bring forth. Now, the values and beliefs are what we are working with, and that is reflective in our inner speech. So if we observe our dialogue, we'll notice that our values and beliefs, what we believe about ourselves, our assumptions, our interpretations of ourselves in relation to the other attributes to the journey, in relation to the other attributes to success, are being revealed when we speak to ourselves in our own mind, as well as when we communicate with the outer world to others. We're working with mind via our inner speech. So in the Kabbalion, they say, the principle embodies the truth that all is mind. So the way to see this is that this is all one mind, and everything is an expression of that one mind. And the interpreter of all of this is you. And based on your interpretations is how you relate to all these expressions of the one mind, whatever it may be, which includes how you relate to people, environments, circumstance, and information, is going to determine your journey and your ability to stay to a high degree of conviction that you will be able to bring forth what you desire in the mind. And one of the things we want to remember is this outer world is an expression of the inner world via our imagination, and what is being imagined is visual imagery, sensory interpretation in the mind's eye, as well as our inner conversation, how we believe it to be, how do you believe it relates to you, inner world and outer world integration. So that stated, we want to ask ourselves the question, how did this self-image, concept of self, how did this mind interpret our experiences to begin with in a way we would call empowering or disempowering? Well, there's two ways. Number one is from inner world interpretation, and number world is from outer world impression and suggestion, and then interpreting that till it forms the concept of self. Now, if we've got disempowering, negative, doubt, fear-based programming that we want to release from in the mind, so the sources come from our experiences that we gather on the day-to-day basis. Thus, the ideal is to place yourself in circumstances, environments, in conversations, and information that is in harmony and in relation to your vision. So information that says you can bring forth what you desire. Now, an empowering way of looking at this is that all that potentially can exist in mind can be found in the imagination. If you can imagine anything, then it already exists in the unseen reality. And it is the conviction and affirmation of what we imagine in the unseen reality and the desire to bring it forth that starts the journey of creation or expression to bring forth what already exists in the unseen reality. So they say it explains that the all, which is the substantial reality underlying all the outward manifestations and appearances, which we know under the terms the material universe, the phenomena of life, matter, energy, and in short, all that is apparent to our material senses, is spirit, which in itself is unknowable, undefinable, but which may be considered and thought of as an universal, infinite living mind. The understanding of this great Hermetic principle of mentalism enables the individual to really grasp the laws of the mental universe and to apply the same to his well-being and advancement. One of the old Hermetic masters wrote ages long ago, "He who grasps the truth of the mental nature of this universe is well advanced on the path of mastery." And these words are as true today as at the time they were first written. So look at the world that we live in currently. It's a world where speech and mind are the factors that create everything. We have technology, and as a result of the technology, we have ability. As a result of the ability that we have, the behaviors and so forth, we're able to bring forth success in ways that were never done before, in faster, easier ways. Look at the entrepreneurial space. Look at the person running the entrepreneurial endeavor. What are they working with? They're working with their mind and their inner speech, which is reflected in their behaviors, their speech, and the expressions, the creative expression of the mind. This translates into change, innovation, and success. This is what they're working with. Fundamentally, the contents of their mind. So, what are they saturating their mind with? They're saturating their mind with certain kinds of conversations, empowering conversations that they may have learned from others, which is why it's important to saturate your mind with empowering information, or conversations based on what they imagine will one day be seen in this outer world, their creation, their innovation. So they're looking at their innovation, you could say all day long, or sometimes, and reflecting upon it and seeing how the outer world is actually in harmony in bringing forth the vision rather than seeing it as in denial and breaking the journey to success or making it more stressful and convoluted. Now, when we go through life, we recognize that we have what we call limiting beliefs, limiting assumptions, limiting interpretations of ourselves. As we remove these, first identify what they are and remove them, we'll recognize that we will find ourselves being more true to what we desire to bring forth. We will become more one with the vision. We will find ourselves at a deeper level of integration with this five sensory experience, and we'll know what to say, do the right thing at the right time, and it will lead to the end result. This may go against conventional ways of doing things. That's because a lot of conventional ways of doing things are the results of what other people have thought of and brought forth. To follow that structured way of thinking is to send yourself down those pathways. Know that there's infinite pathways to bring forth what you desire, infinite pathways to create success, and all of it is found via your own mind within, because you're connected to everything. And anything that one can imagine and believe to be true and remain in the assumption that it will be true will be brought forth, and the outer world will arrange. It will arrange through your behaviors, through the capabilities, through whatever it is that you do, as well as things changing on their own in ways that we don't consciously know in order to bring forth the result. That's the principle of mentalism. Reflect back on your own journey as I reflect back on my journey. When I've created success in different areas of my life, and I speak primarily to the entrepreneurial space, look back at my journey of my IT business in 2009 to 13, I recognized that I didn't know how it was going to play out. All I know, it was going to play out. And hunches and inspirations and ideas would show up along the way. And what I would also find is the various limiting beliefs that I have within myself, about the various activities that I would do, about the various relationships that I would have on the journey with partners, clients, vendors, whoever on the journey. And all I would do is change my interpretation of how I would relate with them. And the relationships would change. They would reflect the accurate interpretation of being in harmony to the vision. Now, from that perspective, ways of success were brought forth. For example, one of the things that ended up happening is I ended up hanging out with a friend, and we went to a restaurant, and then I ended up meeting one of my old friends from high school. And he mentioned to me that he was starting a restaurant with one of his friends, and maybe I could help him out with stuff. Now, because I was running an IT business, I couldn't see how I would integrate technology in a restaurant, but I was open-minded because I felt the hunch and inspiration from within. We ended up showing up to that location. We walked over to it, and he connected me with the guy who he is partners with, and we ended up actually working a deal where I would create a point of sale system for his restaurant. So I took some open source software called Open Bravo, and I customized it, and I built a point of sale system for them. Now, the reason why I did that is I recognized there was an opportunity there. So even though I was offering IT support for businesses that were at a certain level, traditionally what I had learned 10 years in corporate experience from, which was essentially desktops, managed services, network support, and wireless security, and so forth, I ended up keeping my mind open because there's many ways of bringing forth success. The end of the day was the entrepreneurial success, the business growth at a certain level. Now, what ended up happening was after building this point of sale for them and customizing it, I ended up getting about 6 to 8 different referrals. And as a result, I had a side business or a side aspect of the entrepreneurial endeavor of IT business, providing these point of sale systems, building them. And they were also leading to other business deals, as in they would refer me to clients who needed IT services that were more within the scope of what I was initially looking to offer. Now, all of this came through the referral network, but it wasn't as strategically planned as it may look. It was guided by intuition, one thing leading to the next. So that is a practical example of the outer world rearranging to reflect the mind. And as was stated here in the Kabbalion, one of the old Hermetic masters wrote long ages ago, "He who grasps the truth of the mental nature of the universe is well advanced on the path to mastery, and these words are as true today as at the time they were first written. With the master key in his possession, the student may unlock the many doors of the mental and psychic temple of knowledge and enter the same freely and intelligently." So we call this confidence, self-confidence. And in the last video, I spoke about the self-confidence formula. It's the belief that what you imagine already exists in what we call the unseen reality. And as we persist in what we imagine, it is going to be brought forth in our reality, outer world experience. And all of this can be facilitated by what we are filling up our mind with on the day-to-day journey, which is our inner speech. So all day long, we are carrying on conversations with ourselves, inner speech. And in this inner speech, we are relating with others in our mind's eye. We are being harmonious with others in our mind's eye, or we're arguing with them in our mind's eye in relation to all the people that show up on the journey to bringing forth what we desire. And this is either bringing forth innovation or breakthroughs or quantum leaps and flow, or it's a source of frustration, confusion, and unnecessary complexity, which then reveals itself on the journey. And by revealing itself on the journey, I'm talking about perhaps a long, frustrating journey to bringing forth what you desire. That's why it's very important to observe and readjust our inner speech. Watch the series I did on the 21-day mental diet. I'll put a link in the description. The recognition of all is mind is that this is all one mind, and everything in this mind and everything that you see in this outer world is an interpretation, externalization, and reflection of what is within our mind. As in, the contents of our mind is what we are experiencing here in this outer world. And while we didn't intentionally, a lot of times, put the certain content in our mind, we would call limited thinking, disempowering thinking, and so forth, we have the power to change it so that we can operate more from what we would call inner locus of control, seeing yourself as the cause of the outer world rather than the effect of the outer world. Now, the way to really emphasize this is Neville's non-dualistic approach, which is that this is all one mind, as the Kybalion states as well, and everything is an expression and individualization of that one mind. And you've probably heard me say this many times before. We are individual expressions of the same mind. So at the same time, we are both individual expressions as well as we are all one. Now, the same is to be said on anything that is in relation to your vision. So you have a vision, that which you desire to bring forth, and anything that shows up in the outer world as far as experiences, five sensory integration, is interpreted and also remolded from our inner speech, our inner dialogue. So Neville states, the natural view confines reality to the moment called now. To the natural view, the past and future are purely imaginary. So we can be very identified with the physical aspect of ourself and not as identified with the mental aspect of ourself, which has access to the imagination, which is referred to as the spiritual view, in which he states, the spiritual view, on the other hand, sees the contents of time. It sees events as distinct and separate as objects in space. The past and future are a present whole to the spiritual view. What is mental and subjective to the natural man is concrete and objective to the spiritual man. The spiritual man speaks to the natural man through the language of desire. So you have a desire, that which you want to see brought forth. That is what he refers to as the spiritual man speaking to the natural man. So you feel the sensations of the desire. The natural man then interprets the desire and says, what do I want to see brought forth? And then we go into our imagination and we construct or we imagine what it would look like when we have produced the result, or what success looks like. And this stimulates the spiritual man into what he says here. The key to progress in life and to the fulfillment of dreams lies in ready obedience to its voice. So the way I interpret this is, and based on my experience, is the true inner voice. And the true inner voice is intuition, and it guides you to the fulfillment of what you desire to experience. So let's reflect back on my story. Intuition, I got a hunch and inspiration to connect with him. I had a hunch and inspiration to accept that offer, and during that time I was getting a lot of different offers for different kinds of IT services, business opportunities, and so forth. And this one was intuitively right. I felt it. I felt a connection with it, which is why we want to honor this intuition, because this is the relationship between the natural man and the spiritual man. So again, the natural man sees reality in a certain way and can become overly identified with this and not recognize the power of now, that everything exists now. The spiritual view, or the spiritual man, sees it as everything is now. Everything is now means that all things exist now, all possibilities exist, and what is in my imagination can be reflected here. And although there is a natural progression of how things play out in this outer world, it will be done. It will be brought forth. So thus we release from unnecessary complexity and reactivity on the journey that appears based on our interpretation within, that what we desire to be brought forth will not be brought forth. So he says the spiritual man speaks to the natural man through the language of desire. The key to progress in life and to the fulfillment of dreams lies in its ready obedience to its voice. With its larger outlook, the four-dimensional self then constructs the means necessary to realize the accepted end. So what we're doing is we're allowing this spiritual self, or the fourth-dimensional self, to construct the ways in which we bring forth the end result. And the instructions, the hunches and inspirations are received within in the mind. And all of this other stuff is happening behind the scenes. It's beyond what we call conscious awareness. It's happening in the subconscious realm. So our goal is to fill our imagination, our mind, with inner speech of what we desire and how we desire to experience the journey based on how we interpret the different experiences that we have each day, to the point where our mind is saturated, our consciousness is saturated, and doesn't have to be totally saturated, but we practice this more so each day. And then as a result, those instructions are sent to the subconscious mind. And what he states here, With its larger outlook, the fourth dimensional self then constructs the means necessary to realize the accepted end. So things can change in the outer world without your conscious knowing. And also, hunches, inspirations, and optimal actions, inspiration is received within. And then you'll find yourself from a flow-based acting upon it. He says the undisciplined mind finds it difficult to assume a state which is denied by the senses. So you can look at it this way. When you imagine something, you are selecting a state. And after you've selected the state and you assume it to be done, and watch the video I did on It Is Done, I'll put a link in the description, then what happens is you move down the journey to the fulfillment of that, what you imagine. Now, this is the case for anybody who has created success in anything in life, has brought forth any vision. At some point, they saw this vision of what they were going to bring forth. They committed to it and they remained committed to it. Now, what happens is because the natural man, as he refers to, or the natural self, is experiencing time and space and the day-to-day journey, let's say, what we're interpreting it from is, why isn't this vision here right now? And this creates inner resistance and inner conversation, inner dialogue that is not reflective of the true inner voice, the distinct intuitive-based inner voice in which he refers to and says, the key to progress in life and to the fulfillment of dreams lies in the ready obedience to its true inner voice, which, by the way, is distinct from mental chatter. So another video I'm going to recommend you watch is the video that I did differentiating between the mental chatter and the true inner voice. Now, the true inner voice brings forth the hunches, inspirations, and it might not necessarily be an inner voice. For me, it's an inner voice, and for many others that I communicate with, it's an inner voice. And the inner voice is going to allow you to reinterpret the five sensory experience and recognize that it's rearranging, which includes your interaction with it, other people's interaction with it, and everything else interaction with it. Now, all of this is still happening in the mind. All of this, including this conversation that we're having. The way of looking at this is that this conversation and this interaction, this discussion, is an externalization of your own consciousness. This, what was brought forth as part of your own way of bringing forth your success. If you see it in contribution, or if you see this information in relationship, then you are already doing this. This is not something that is a new skill. We're actually always doing this all the time. Except the difference is we're now becoming more conscious of this. We're reinterpreting the five senses to see it more from a place of affirmation to what you desire to create rather than denial of what you desire to create. He says the habit of withdrawing attention from the region of sensation and concentrating it on the invisible develops our spiritual outlook and enables us to penetrate beyond the world of sense and to see that which is invisible. So again, all that we can imagine, we can bring forth, and you have the ability to bring it forth through you and from you via your inner conversations and mind and interpretation and allowing it to happen, which most of it is being governed and brought forth via the spiritual self. And the spiritual self knows ways that you don't consciously know of yet and is part of a spiritual realm. And the spiritual self is connected to the spiritual realm and all the other infinity that goes on behind the scenes. So the simple way to put this into action, and let's integrate what we've been discussing in this video in relation to the 3 steps here, is step number 1. The first step is changing the future. He says the first step in changing the future, or bringing forth what you desire, is that you define your objective. Know definitely what you want. So what is it that you want? What does the success look like? What does the business look like? What does the relationship look like? What does the area of your life that you want to see brought forth look like? Define it and construct, he says. Secondly, construct an event which you believe you would encounter following the fulfillment of your desire. An event which implies fulfillment of your desire, something that will have the action of self predominant. Now, what I did when I recall myself, as mentioned, I learned this stuff from Think and Grow Rich, and then when I encountered Neville's information, I started to understand it to a deeper level because the way he articulates it is very precise. Now, the way it happened for me is, I remember back in the days, is that I would imagine having certain conversations with people, such as this context where I'll be making videos, speaking at live events, doing seminars, doing consulting, where I would be reflecting upon my business successes and sharing with others. That was very important to me. Teaching is part of my true self. I enjoy teaching and I love to teach. And I always imagine myself teaching the thing that I'm going through. So anytime I'm experiencing some kind of adversity or complexity or any kind of thing that I'm doing, I imagine myself achieving a certain level of mastery on it and then teaching others. See, that right there is me doing this thing. I'm constructing a scene and I'm imagining that and I'm saying that's what I desire. So all of this stuff happens in between the business success, the other successes in the areas that I teach from, so that it fulfills this end result vision of having this conversation with you and others that I have the conversation with in consulting and leadership. Immobilize the physical body and induce a condition akin to sleep. Now, this is what we've been referring to in the last few videos, not the one I released a few days ago, but the two prior to that, about visualization. So I'm going to put the links in the description for those videos. I recommend you watch it. And he's referring to a concept called state akin to sleep. Now, when you do this in state akin to sleep, the reason why we do it in state akin to sleep is because it impresses the subconscious mind. Now, you can also do it throughout the day. What I found with myself is that I have the tendency to imagine things before falling asleep. And for years, I would imagine what I desire to be brought forth. And little did I know, except now, from connecting the dots looking backwards and relating to this information, that what it was doing was exactly these things. It was saturating the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind was bringing forth instruction. It was bringing forth inner conversations, true inner voice, to bring forth the end result and interpretation of the experiences on the journey. So he says, immobilize the physical body and induce a condition akin to sleep. Lie on a bed or relax in a chair and imagine that you are sleepy. Then, with eyelids closed and your attention focused on the action you intend to experience in imagination, mentally feel yourself right into the proposed action, imagining all the while that you are actually performing the action here and now. You must always participate in the imaginary action, not merely stand back and look on, but you must feel that you are actually performing the action so that your imaginary sensation is real to you. Now, when we can do this with such vividness, we experience a sensation of conviction, affirmation, and then we bring ourselves back into the state of mind of empowerment, and we recognize that we do have the ability to bring forth success. So not only is this good to work with mind at a subconscious level, the gifts of speech and mind at a subconscious level, using the principle of mentalism, but also if you find yourself on the journey, falling out of the ideal state, breaking your flow, feeling frustrated, at any point in time, we can return back to that same scene, or we can reinterpret, as we discussed in the revision video, which I'm also linking in the description, all the experiences that we have in the day that we say are breaking the flow, denying that what we desire to be brought forth will be brought forth. We can replay the scene and imagine it happened in the way that was ideal to bring us back into the ideal state of mind. See, the goal is to bring forth success. And the goal also is to bring it forth from a place of flow rather than a place of force. All these things that happen on the journey are rearrangements to the externalization of that vision. And the rearrangement of the five sensory experience can be interpreted as allowing, one with, I know why it's happening, and thus allowing yourself to have a more flow-based journey to the outcome, or it could be force, frustration, and stress-based rearrangement in the outer world to reflect that vision in the mind that has been affirmed in the subconscious. Now, this applies not just for what we consciously, as in what we want to see brought forth, but even the kind of information we're allowing into our mind that we don't consciously want to see more of. More important, how we are interpreting that information. If there's information that is disempowering you that you're interpreting, then you have fundamentally three choices. Number one is you can reinterpret it in a way that allows you to change it or inspire you to make a difference. Number two, you can accept it the way it is, as is. Or number 3, you could let it go. You could stop consuming that information. Now, the answer to this is going to be found within, because this is your own relationship with your spiritual self, and this is found within. So depending on the scenario, depending on the circumstance, the interpretation is found within. As we discuss these elements on the videos, it is not a substitute when it comes to building a relationship with your own subconscious mind and your own connection via your inner voice. The only way to understand this to a deep degree and further continue in understanding this, as I feel like I'm continuously understanding this, is to practice this information and build your own connection with the natural you, as he refers to, and the spiritual you. Now, again, all of this is happening in mind. All of this. Interpretation, integration of this information is all found in your mind. And what is in your mind? Your inner dialogue about this information, about yourself, about your experiences, about your journey. And all of that inner dialogue, what's going on in the speech, is further impressing the subconscious mind and creating accordingly. This is the key distinction that I'd like you to understand, so that you can consciously work with the two gifts of speech and mind to bring forth what you desire from a place of flow. If you want to copy this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.